Namaskaram. So now let's talk about chapter 4 of the book Hidden Mystery. Topic of the chapter 4 is the transformative power of idols. So let's discuss this chapter. Dr. Frank Rudloff spent his whole life doing research on an amazing phenomena. I would like to tell you about it so that you can understand more easily what idol worship is about. Rudloff studied and reached surprising conclusions about a particular process that most primitive communities have been familiar with for a long time. Certain primitive tribes believe that it is possible to make a person suffer from a particular disease through a clay effigy that represents him. They believe that even death can be brought about in this way. Dr. Rudloff spent 30 years trying to find out how it is possible to transmit disease and death through an earthen representation of someone. Rudloff lived amongst the tribes in the Amazon for years and approached the subject skeptically and scientifically. Hundreds of times he actually saw disease and death being transmitted with his own eye, even if the person was 1,000 miles away. His long study convinced him of the truth of such happenings. There were three things which he came to understand after all his experiments. Firstly, it was not necessary for the clay effigy to exactly resemble the person in whom disease or death was to be invoked. It is difficult even for an experienced sculptor to make a clay effigy which is exactly like a particular person. But it is not necessary. What is important is to establish the shape and the form of the person mentally on the earthen representation. And there is a method for doing this. If one closes one's eye and remembers the person and mentally imposes one's will on the image, it will become symbolic and active. I have already told you about the tilak and that the science of yoga has found the third eye, which is between the two eyebrows, to have great power stored in it. It is a great transmitter. If you ask your son or a servant to do something and you feel they may refuse, you can do a small experiment. If you concentrate your energy on the center between your eyes and tell them what you want them to do, 9 times out of 10 they will do it. But if you ask them without concentrating your energy that way, 9 times out of 10 they will not. Any idea or thought conveyed with the energy concentrated between the two eyes moves rapidly and carries with it great power. In the same way, if you concentrate on the image of a person with the energy of the third eye chakra, and if that thought is then directed at the clay effigy, it no longer remains mere clay. The clay mass becomes energized by your concentrated will. If you mentally infuse some disease into it for 1 minute, the person whom the clay effigy represents will get that disease. No matter how far away the person may be from you, he will be affected, he may even die. Rudolph wrote that what seemed unbelievable actually did happen during his experiments. Before his very eyes, he saw tribesmen force a tree through an earthen replica of it to dry up and wither. The tree, which had been lush, green, and healthy, withered and its leaf became dry. In spite of being watered, within a month the tree became diseased and died. What happened to a tree could happen to a person. I am talking about these findings of Rudolph's because idol worship is a similar experiment but on a more profound dimension. If we can transmit disease or death to somebody, there is no reason why we cannot establish or re establish a relationship with those who are dead. And there is no reason why we should not take a jump by means of an idol into that which is all pervading and unmanifest. The whole basis of idol worship is the relationship between your mind and the cosmic mind. What is needed is just a bridge between the two, and that bridge can be made. The idol is an attempt to create that bridge. Only something which is manifest, like the form of an idol, can become the bridge, because it is not possible for you to establish a direct link with the formless. No matter how much one may talk about the formless and the unmanifest, it is mere talk and does not convey anything to you. Whatever experiences your mind has are all experiences of form and shape. You have no experience of the formless. Any words cannot create any resonance in you about that which you have never experienced. You will go on talking about the formless and continue living with form. So, if you want to establish a relationship with the formless, you will have to create something which on one side has a form and on the other is formless. That is the secret of the idol. Let me explain this another way. From our side, we need a bridge that has a tangible form, but that also has a formless part. At our end, it is manifest, and at the farther end, it is approaches the divine. It becomes unmanifest. If the idol remains just an idol, it cannot act as a bridge. If it is absolutely formless, then it too cannot become a bridge. The idol has to serve two purposes. It has to be visible on our side and dissolve into the formless on the other. If I tell you that the term idol worship is wrong, you will be surprised. But actually, it is absolutely wrong. It is wrong because for someone who knows how to worship, the idol does not remain just an idol. A person who only sees the idol does not know what worship is or how to worship. We are using two words, one is idol and the other is worship. These two concepts cannot be experienced by the same person simultaneously. The word idol is for those who have never worshipped, and the word worship belongs to those who have never seen an idol. Put differently, we can say that worship is the art of making the idol disappear. It is the art of slowly dropping the manifest and entering the unmanifest. The manifest form gradually dissolves into the unmanifest, and as the worship deepens, only the unmanifest remains. So, idol worship is self contradictory. Hence, someone who is worshipping will be puzzled as to where the idol is, and someone who has never worshipped will wonder what a stone idol can do. These two types of people have two different types of experiences, and between them there is no common ground. When you go to a temple, you see only an idol because you are not able to see the worship itself. In a temple, a Mira, the female Indian mystic who is a symbol of devotion, can be found totally absorbed in her worship. For her, there is no idol. As soon as real worship deepens, the idol dissolves. We see idols because we do not know what worship is. As less and less worship happens in this world, we will see more and more idols. And once there are many idols, worship will as good as disappear. Furthermore, the idols will have to be destroyed because what use will they be? They will be irrelevant. Ordinarily, we think that the more primitive a man is, the more likely he is to be an idol worshipper, and as man becomes more intelligent, he drops his idols. But this is not true. In reality, worship has its own science, and the more ignorant we become about it, the more difficult to grasp it seems to us. In this connection, it will be helpful to tell you one more thing. Our belief that man has made progress in all directions, that he has fully evolved, is absolutely wrong. The life of man is so vast that if he makes great progress in one direction, he does not even realize how far he has remained behind in another direction. If science has made great progress, we have fallen far behind in the matter of religion. Whenever religion flourishes, science lags behind. When we grow in one direction, the other dimensions are completely forgotten. In 1880s, in Europe, the caves of Altamira were discovered. In those caves, there are colored pictures said to have been drawn 20,000 years ago. But the colors of the pictures look as fresh as if they were painted yesterday. Because of this, Don Marcelino, who discovered these caves, were criticized all over Europe. Everyone thought he had touched up the pictures. All the artists who saw the pictures said Marcelino was trying to fool the public that such fresh colors could not be ancient. What they were saying seems right in a way because the paintings of Van Gogh, which are not even 100 years old, are already fading. The pictures Picasso painted in his youth look as old as he himself. The colors used these days by artists throughout the world do not last more than 100 years. They are bound to fade within a century. But when the investigation of the caves Marcelino found was completed, it was proved beyond doubt that the caves were more than 20,000 years old. This is a great mystery because the people who painted those colors seem to have known much more about colors than we know at present. We have been able to reach the moon, but we have not been able to make colors that can remain fresh and last longer than 100 years. The people who made these colors 20,000 years ago knew much more about the science of color than we do. The mummies of Egypt are 5,000 years old. They are the dead bodies of human beings, but because they have been so well preserved, it is as if they had died just yesterday. And we have not been able to discover what preservatives mediums might have been used. How could these bodies have been preserved for 5,000 years? There is no deterioration at all, but we have not been able to establish which mediums were used to preserve them. The huge stones on top of the pyramids could not have been placed there by any crane that we have today. It seems beyond the power of a man to have put them there, but it is very unlikely the people of that time had cranes. They must have known some technique, which we cannot even guess it, to lift those rocks. The truth of life are multidimensional. The same work can be done by many different methods and many different techniques. Life is so vast that when we begin to work in one dimension, we forget all other dimensions. Idols were created by very highly developed people. It is worth thinking about. An idol is a bridge connecting us with the cosmic force which surrounds us. So the people who developed the use of idol created a bridge towards understanding the ultimate mystery of life. We say that we have discovered electricity. Certainly, we are more advanced and sophisticated than earlier communities which knew nothing about electricity. We have discovered radio waves and we can send a message from one country to another within a second. So, we are definitely more advanced than people who depend only on the power of their own voice to communicate just a few hundred feet away by shouting. But compared to the people who were able to make a bridge toward contacting the supreme source of life, we are just children. Our electricity, our radio, and similar discoveries are just toys. The art of being connected with the ultimate mystery of life was discovered by people who had worked very hard in that one direction. As I told you earlier, one aspect of the idol is that which can be seen by man, but a window opens out beyond that form towards the formless. The window of a house must have a shape and a form, just as the house does. The window cannot be formless, but when you open the window and look at the sky, you enter the formless. If I say to someone who has never opened his window to see the sky, by opening the window of my house, I am able to see the formless, he will say, I am mad. How can one see the infinite window from a small window? How can one see the infinite from a small window? At the most, whatever can be seen from a window can only be as big as the window itself. He is being perfectly logical, and if he has never seen the sky through the window, it will be difficult to convince him that just a small window can open onto the infinite. The window does not set a limitation on that onto which it opens, nor does the idol set a limitation on the formless. Those who think that an idol is an obstacle in understanding the unmanifest make a great mistake, and those who think that by breaking a window the sky can be broken have helped to create a lot of foolishness in the world. Those who think that by destroying an idol or form, the formless can be destroyed are no less than mad, but people who do not understand the art and alchemy of worship may well think of destroying idols. Worship is such an inner, subjective, and personal matter. It cannot be expressed or demonstrated. Anything inner and personal in life cannot be demonstrated. If my heart is cut open, you will not be able to see love in it, nor will you find anger, hate, forgiveness, or compassion. You will find only a sort of pump for the circulation of blood. If after putting me on the operating table and investigating my heart, a surgeon certifies I have never experienced any love or hate, I have no way of proving him wrong. Will the surgeon confirm my claim that I have loved? He may say I am deluded, but if I ask the doctor whether he has had any experiences of love or hate, and if he is logical and honest, he will say he also has had such delusions. Otherwise, the heart as seen on the operating table is only a pump like object for the circulation of the blood. And there is nothing like a heart which feels love or hate. If your eyes are operated on and examined, it will not be possible to prove they have seen dreams. How can you know from an eye opened upon the operating table that at night, while closed, it has seen many dreams? We all see dreams, but whether do they exist? Dreams may be usual, Dreams may be unreal, but their existence cannot be denied. However unreal a dream might be, it happened somewhere within. If it was a frightening dream, when you wake up, your heart will be beating faster even if it was unreal. If you cried during your dream, when you wake up, your eyes will be wet. Something has happened internally, but the physical eyes do not reveal anything. Whether whatever is inner, subjective, and personal cannot be seen outwardly. An idol can be seen, as can the heart or the eye, but worship cannot be seen. Worship is like love or a dream. Hence, when you pass a temple, you can see the idol but not the worship. So, if you saw Meera dancing before an idol, you would think she was mad, naturally, because her worship cannot be seen. She just seems to be dancing in front of a stone. When Ramakrishna was appointed to be the priest in the Dakshineswar temple in Kolkata, after a few days people began to complain about him. It was said that before offering flowers to the deity, Ramakrishna first smelled them himself. Before offering the deity food, he tasted it himself. This was thought to be sacrilegious. Ramakrishna was summoned before the temple committee and asked for an explanation. He said that Whenever his mother had fed him, she would first taste the food to decide whether it was tasty enough for him. She would first decide whether it was worth giving to him. So he was doing the same with the deity. How could he offer food that he had not tasted? How could he offer flowers he had not smelled? The committee said this went against all the rules of worship, but Ramakrishna asked, can there be any rules for worship? Can there be any rules for love? Where there are regulations, worship dies. Where there are regulations, love dies. Love is an outpouring of inner feelings which are very personal and individual. There is a universal truth in this which can be recognized. When two lovers love, though they are both loving, they love in their own individual way. The manifestation may be entirely different, but there is a similarity of experience. Their love may have its own individuality, but within their love, the same soul resides. I was telling you that though the idol can be seen, worship cannot be. But still, we have created the expression idol worship, which is absolutely wrong. Worship is the method of obliterating the idol. First, the devotee makes the idol and then he makes it disappear. In an earthly sense, he makes the idol, and in a spiritual sense, he destroys it. He makes it from mud and then lets it dissolve into the ultimate existence. I will now tell you about one more aspect. In this country, for thousands of years, we have made idols and then immersed them in water. Many people feel it a strange thing to do, and they have asked me why beautiful idols are made of the goddesses Kali, and then after a few days they are just thrown into the water. Why is the god Ganesha decorated ceremoniously and worshipped lovingly for several days and then immersed in water, thrown into the sea, a river, or a lake? This is mad, but there is a beautiful concept behind this immersion. The real secret of worship is in making an idol and then letting it disappear, giving a shape and form to the idol and then letting it vanish into the formless. It is all symbolic. The act of making an idol of the goddess Kali, worshipping it, and then immersing it in water. But we do not worship in the right way. We make the idol, decorate it beautifully, and look after it, and then we are reluctant to let it go by immersing it. If we had really worshipped in the deepest sense, then the idol would have disappeared inside us, been absorbed into us, long before we let it disappear into the water. If real worship had happened, there would have been no need to immerse the idol at all. It might have remained whether it was, but the heart of the worshipper would have been immersed into existence, into the divine. Then, if we had gone to immerse the idol, it would have been like throwing away a spent cartridge. It would have done its work. Nowadays, though, when we take the idol to be immersed into the water, it is still like an unspent cartridge, and already we are taking it to be drowned. So naturally, we are unhappy about it. In earlier times, during 21 days of worship, the cartridges would have been fired. It would have already served its purpose. During that time, the immersion or disappearance of the idol would have already taken place. Worship is an immersion. You begin your journey from the idol and proceed through the ritual of worship. As you go ahead, the idol is left behind and only the state of worship remains. If you stop at the idol, you do not know what worship is. If you move into the experience of worship, you will know the root of worship and the real purpose of the idol. What are the principles involved in the use and worship of an idol? Firstly, in order to jump into the ultimate truth for which you are searching, you need some solid ground. A jumping board. The ultimate truth does not need any solid ground, but you need a place from where to set out, from where you can take a jump. You have set out to jump into the ocean, and the ocean is infinite. You will need a shore or coastline from where you can take the jump. Until you jump, where else could you be except on the shore? Once you jump, you will have left it behind. But will you not look back to thank the shore from where you jumped into the infinite? It seems contradictory. How is it possible to jump from form to formless? If you are going to be rational about it, then the statement is wrong. How can form lead to the formless? Form should only take you to a deeper form. If you asked Krishnamurti, he would say it is impossible. How can you jump from form to formless? How can you jump from the word to the wordless? But no, all jumps are from form to formless because deep down, form is not the opposite of formless, but only a part of it and an individual part. It may seem separate to us because of our limited vision, but in fact, form and formless are indivisible. When we are standing on the shore looking at the ocean, we feel that they are separate and that this shore and the opposite shore far across the ocean are also separate. But if we go deep underneath the water, we will see that this shore and the opposite one are connected at the bottom of the ocean. If we think in the language of science, there is a very interesting fact. Along the bottom of the whole ocean is mud or sand. If we dive into the ocean, we will find sand. If we dig into the land, we will find water. Expressed in scientific terms, we could say there is more water and less mud in the ocean, and there is more mud and less water on the land. The difference is only a difference of proportion, of degree. They are not actually separate. Everything is one and united. Whatever we describe as having form is united with the formless, and the formless too is united with form. We are standing in form, and the concept of the idol accepts the fact that we are standing in form. This is the situation, this is where we are, and we can only begin our journey from where we are, not from where we have to reach. Many philosophies begin from where we should ultimately be. But how is it possible to begin a journey from where we are not? The journey has to begin from where we are. And where we are living in form. All our experiences belong to form, to the manifest. We haven't known anything that is not manifest, that does not have a form. If we have loved, we have loved a form. If we have hated, we have hated a form. All our attractions are related to form, and all our repulsions are related to form. Our friends and enemies are all in form. Whatsoever we do is done with form. The original understanding about status, religious statues and idols accepts this fact. So, if we are to set out on our journey to the formless, we will also have to give the formless some form. Of course, that form will be according to our own liking. One person experiences the formless in Mahavira, someone else in Krishna, and still another in Jesus. Whosoever has seen the formless in Jesus by looking into his eyes has found a door which opens into the formless sky, and whosoever has held Jesus hand has found that it ceases to be his hand, it has become the hand of the infinite. If someone who has heard Jesus' words and felt his heart vibrate, not in response to the words, but to what was beyond those words, has created a statue of Jesus and worshipped it. There can be no easier way than this to make the jump into the formless. Someone has found the formless in Krishna, someone has found it in Buddha, and someone else has found it in Mahavira. But remember, at first we will only be able to see the formless, the infinite, through some form. Pure formlessness cannot be seen directly by anyone. We do not have the capacity to see it directly. The formless has to come to us bound in a form. This is what a divine incarnation means, that the formless has assumed a shape and a form, that the infinite has chosen to show you a tangible bodily form. It seems self contradictory, but this is what a divine incarnation is. A divine incarnation is a sort of platform from where you can see the vast sky. A divine incarnation is a glimpses of the formless. You cannot have a direct contact with the formless. The experience of it will be through some form. And once this happens, the experience can be repeated through that form again and again very easily. Whosoever has seen Buddha will find him rising alive from his picture or image. For whoever loves Buddha, his statue will slowly disappear and Buddha's living being will be felt there. Buddha, Mahavira, Krishna, or Christ, all of them leave behind devices through which to contact them. Through these devices, their devotees can establish contact with them. So, the form of the statue is a very specific arrangement. The art and science of making a religious statue consists of many concepts and calculations. If these are remembered while making the statue, then the statue can lead you deeper into meditation. In this connection, it will be good to remember two or three things. If you have seen any of Buddha's statues, you will have observed that they represent a certain state of being rather than a particular individual. If you look deeply at a statue of Buddha, within a few moments you will feel that great compassion is soaring on you from all around. Buddha's raised hand, his half closed eye, his proportionately sculptured face, his graceful expression, his delicate way of sitting, all are in stone deep, all are in some deeper sense meant to evoke compassion in you. When someone asked the great French artist Cézanne why he painted, he said, I draw pictures only to find what form a certain emotion, a certain feeling of my heart will take on a canvas. In my efforts to express that feeling, a picture emerges. If someone meditates on that picture, he can experience the same emotion that was present in the painter's heart. When you look at a painting, you see just the form. You are not aware of such a phenomenon, but then you will also not be able to understand the soul of the painter. If someone were to draw some crisscross lines on a canvas, they would not just the crisscross. If you concentrate on them, something will go crisscross within you too. Because it is the nature of the mind that it vibrates in you with a similar resonance to that which it seems outside itself. If the same lines were drawn with a particular symmetry, looking at them, your mind too would attain to some harmony. You probably do not know that the joy you feel when you look at a flower is not so much because of the flower itself, but because of the symmetry of its petals, which is also induced in you. When you are attracted to the beauty in someone's face, it is not because of that person's beauty, but because it corresponds to your inner image of beauty. It produces a resonance of beauty in you, which makes you feel that something within you is also beautified. In a similar way, the presence of an ugly face makes something within you feel uncomfortable. The experience of joy in the presence of someone who is beautiful is because of the flow of beauty which it brings about in you, making you also more beautiful. Ugliness means that something is without proportions, gross, asymmetrical, and unbalanced. And this evokes in us a feeling of disharmony, repulsion, disorder, and discomfort. When Nijinsky committed suicide, people went to his house to investigate the situation and came out within 10 or 15 minutes feeling a sense of uneasiness. They said it did not feel good to go into his house and that anyone who stayed in it for as long as Nijinsky had would also commit suicide. What was it about his house which was so unpleasant? He had painted all the walls and ceilings red and black. For 2 years it had been like this. It was not surprising that he went mad and committed suicide. The people who went inside his house said anyone staying in that house for 2 years would also have gone mad, and not to have committed suicide for 2 years showed that Nijinsky must have been a very courageous man. The whole atmosphere of the house was utterly chaotic. Whatsoever you see creates its echo within you. In some deep sense, you become like that which you see. All statues of Buddha are made to reflect compassion because that is his inner message. Buddha said, if you have compassion, you have everything. But what does compassion mean? It does not mean love. Love comes and goes, but compassion is a love which once it comes never goes. In love, there is a subtle desire to get something from the other. In compassion, there is the awareness that no one has anything to give. Everyone is so poor that there is nothing they can give, and that is why there is compassion. There is no demand in compassion. In this state, there is no desire even to give. But the effect of such compassion is that all the doors of the heart become wide open and something spontaneously begins to be distributed. Buddha told his disciples, when you meditate, worship, or pray, remember to immediately distribute whatsoever peace you receive. Do not keep it with you even for a moment. I call you irreligious if you do so. When you are full of joy after meditation, immediately pray to the Supreme Being to let that joy be distributed to those who need it. Open the doors of your heart and let the joy flow towards all those who need it just as water flows down the mountains. The, this great compassion is described by Buddha as the ultimate liberation. So, all the statues of Buddha were made in such a way that in their presence the worshipper would feel the resonance and vibrations of compassion within himself. But how can you worship a statue of Buddha? I am taking this one example to make things more clear to you. If you want to worship a statue of Buddha, the center of worship will be the heart. If you do not know this, you will never be able to understand Buddha's statue because the very purpose of it is to create compassion in you. The center of compassion is the heart. So, while worshipping Buddha, our awareness on the one side should be on his heart, and on the other side on our own heart. You will have to dive deeply into the feeling where both hearts are beating in one rhythm. A moment will come when you feel a thread connecting your heart to that within Buddha's statue. You will not only feel it, but you will be able to see the pulsation of the statue's heart with open eyes. When that happens, you will know that life has been imparted to the statue, otherwise, there is no life in it, and worshipping it is meaningless. The heart of the statue can be seen to be pulsating. If you have rightly meditated on the pulsations of your heart and at the same time on Buddha's heart, a relationship will be established between the two. Then your heart will be beating with Buddha, just as you see your face reflected in a mirror. Have you ever watched your heart beating in a mirror? You will say a mirror is a mirror. It is bound to reflect all movements. In a deep sense, in a deeper religious sense, an idol can also be a mirror. So your heart and that of the idol will pulsate. Until this happens, worship cannot begin because the idol is still only of stone. Life has not been invoked into it. If you want to meditate on the statue of Buddha, the center has to be the heart. If you want to meditate on Mahavira, there is a different center. For Jesus there is another center, and for Krishna, yet another. All statues are made with a different center as the basis. Even though a society may have been worshipping a certain idol for thousands of years, it may not be aware of its center, and if the center is not known, you cannot establish a connection with the statue. You may offer flowers and incense, you may bow down to it, but you will have done it all before a mere stone. Remember, the stone has to be transformed into a deity. That part will not be done by the sculpture. It will have to be done by you. The sculpture will only give it a shape. Who will pour life into it? Life has to be instilled into it by the devotee. Without that, it is just a stone. Worship begins only after life has been given to the statue. And what is worship? Once you are able to invoke life in a statue, you are worshipping a real, alive deity. Try to understand this deeply. As soon as something becomes alive, the form and the formless are both present in it. The body is the form, and the life that is in it is the formless. Life has no form. If someone cuts off my hand, my life is not cut off. If I was hypnotized or anesthetized and my hand was cut off, I would not feel any pain. My whole brain can be removed without my becoming aware that it is no longer inside the body because life as such has no shape or form. Wherever there is life, there is a meeting of form and formlessness. Matter has form, consciousness has none. As long as an idol is just a stone, there is only shape and form. But as soon as a devotee invokes life into it, it becomes alive. Remember, the worshipper who cannot bring his heart to pulsate in the statue will not be able to have the heart of the ultimate pulsate within himself. This is the very criteria. As soon as the devotee is able to make his heart pulsate within the idol is brought to life. and then simultaneously at one end it has form and at the other end it becomes the door to the formless. To travel through this door is worship. Worship is the journey from form to formlessness. There are several steps to worship, but the first and fundamental one is to understand that every individual is self centered. Our whole way of living a, is as though I am is the center of the whole world. The moon and the stars rise for me. The birds are flying for my joy, and the sun too is giving light for me. The whole world is revolving around me. I am the center of the whole world. Such a person cannot know worship. Feeling that he is at the center and the rest of the world is its circumference. In worship, you see the opposite. The fundamental law of worship is I am on the circumference, the center is somewhere else. An irreligious man's basic philosophy is that he is the center and the rest of the world is the periphery. Even if God exists, he is on the periphery. He is there for me. If I am sick, he must cure me. If my son is unemployed, he must get him a job. If I am in trouble, God has to run to my aid. This type of theism is worse than atheism. Such a person does not understand what he is saying. The right meaning of worship, the right meaning of prayer, of being religious is to understand that you are on the periphery and the existence is the center. As soon as the heart of the image is alive and pulsating, as soon as one experiences that the image is alive, formlessness has entered it. So, the basic foundation for worship is the feeling. I am on the periphery. I will dance for you, sing for you, live for you, and breathe for you. And whatever happens will be for you, the center. A great sage named Totapuri was once staying with Ramakrishna. He asked Ramakrishna how long he was going to remain obsessed with an idol. It was time he began his journey into the formless. Ramakrishna replied that he was ready to start his journey. In fact, Ramakrishna was already ready to learn anything from anybody. He was always ready to learn from whosoever wanted to teach. But he asked Totapuri to wait until he got permission from his mother. Which mother? Totapuri asked. Ramakrishna replied, my mother, the goddess Kali. Totapuri said, but that's exactly what I am talking about. How long will you go on being caught up with that stone idol of Kali? Do you want to ask that stone? Ramakrishna replied, there is no other way but to ask her. From the moment I began to worship her, she became the center and I moved to the circumference. Now that I am not, she has been asked permission. Whatsoever I do is for her. Without her permission, even enlightenment is meaningless. If she orders me to go to hell, I am ready. But without asking her, nothing can be done. Totapuri could not understand this. If Ramakrishna had to ask Kali permission to stop worshipping her, how would she grant it? Do we ask the permission of a person we want to drop? Each permission needed to drop something. By this time, Ramakrishna had gone to the temple. Totapuri followed him. He saw tears coming from Ramakrishna's eyes. He was begging Kali again and again to allow him to stop worshipping her. He told her that Totapuri was waiting for him. Then suddenly he became joyous and began dancing. Totapuri, who was standing behind him, asked what had happened. Ramakrishna said, she has given her permission. Now I am ready to learn from you. The meaning of having someone as your center is that your life is now a surrendered life. Worshipping implies a surrendered life. Worshipping the divine means living as the divine wishes, sitting and standing, eating and drinking, speaking and remaining silent too for the divine. As soon as the formless becomes one's center, a mysterious current begins to flow, a sort of expansion begins. As it is, we have contracted ourselves, but when the seed cracks open, it begins to become a tree. We have contracted ourselves in our eye, but when that eye cracks open, sprouts come out and the expansion begins. These sprouts can expand enough to encompass the whole world. Religion is full of many surprises, but we do not understand how such a thing might happen because from our very birth we have believed ourselves to be the center of the world. Buddha used to suggest that his disciples spend some time in a cremation ground. They needed to be there for 3 months before they could be initiated as monks. They would say they had come to learn from him, not from the cremation grounds. But Buddha would insist and say, after 3 months in the burning grounds, your eye will be surrendered and it will be easier to teach you. For 3 months, every day you will see bodies being burned, and at least once during the 3 months, you will begin to think this world does not exist for you alone. When you were not there, the world existed. This person whose body you are watching being burned also thought just moments before his death that the world existed for him. The world does not even know now that this person is no more. The ocean does not notice that a wave has vanished. So go on watching, and when you realize that the world does not exist for you, come to me. Then real meditation can begin. As long as you are at the center, there is no possibility of real worship, of prayer or meditation. There is only a deep illusion. Worship will begin when the illusion vanishes. Worship begins when I is dropped and thou becomes significant. Remember, first the devotee makes the statue disappear and opens the door to the formless. Then he makes himself disappear and worship begins. As soon as the door to the formless opens through a statue, the dissolution of one's ego becomes easier. As soon as the devotee realizes that a stone idol can disappear to become a door to the formless, he realizes that he too can become a door to the formless. That if he can forget his so called self, a deeper jump becomes possible. There can be a distinction between two forms, but this does not apply as far as the formless is concerned, because the formless is only one. When the statue has become formless and the devotee has become formless, then there is nothing like two. Numbers have no value in relation to the formless. This is the basis, but there are many methods and techniques to make use of this basis. In this connection, there are a few things to be understood. Sufis have given great importance to dancing as worship. Devotees like Meera and Chaitanya also attached great value to dancing. It has a few qualities which have led to many devotional disciples choosing it as a method. The first effect of dancing is that while dancing more than at any other time, you experience that you are not the body. Because of the fast movements of the dance, you feel that you and your body are separate. In reality, there is a relationship between your body and your consciousness. It is a well arranged relationship, and in your day to day work, that relationship is never broken. Gurdjieff used to say that if there are many pebbles in a container and you shake the container vigorously, the arrangements of things things inside will be disturbed. A pebble that was lying at the bottom will come to the top. One lying on the middle will move to the side, and one which was on the top will be in the middle. The whole arrangement within the can will become topsy turvy. If a pebble was used to being in a certain place in relation to the other pebbles, and if it had become identified with that position, its ego would be destroyed. The stone would feel, I am no more. It was only part of an arrangement, and that arrangement no longer existed. So Meera, Chaitanya, and the Sufis have made profound use of dancing. Darwish dancing goes very deep. In it, the dancer's body spins so fast and with such a totality that every cell and fiber of his body vibrates. This breaks the relationship between the body and the consciousness, and suddenly the dancer realizes that he is separate from his body. So, using dance for worship is very valuable. There are two Christian sects, one of which is known as the Quakers and the others as the Shakers. The Quakers, even today, are quite influential. The names of these sects are very descriptive. During their worship, the Shakers shake the body for hours so vigorously that the whole body, its very self, becomes a trembling, and the Shakers perspires heavily. At that point, where the body is shaking strongly, he will experience that his consciousness is separate from the body, and then that consciousness moves into prayer. The Quakers' name too is meaningful. Their bodies can quake very strongly when they worship. Just as in an earthquake, the ground shakes so much that everything comes crashing down. Quakers get into such a quaking that the body's connection with its consciousness is broken. All of these types of movement, dance, and devotional song have been used to create a gap between the body and consciousness. In this connection, let us understand a little about the science of sound. Science believes that the ultimate unit of all matter is electricity. Eastern sages believe the ultimate unit of matter is not electricity but sound. Modern physics believes that ultimately all matter is made up of electricity, whereas Eastern sages say sound is the basic unit of all matter. Whatever the truth may be, the thing to be understood is that there is a close relationship between electricity and sound. It is possible the statements of the scientists and the sage are both true simultaneously. If not today, then tomorrow, the reality of the ultimate element will be known. One form of that element is sound, and the other is electricity. What that element is has yet to be discovered. Searching from the religious aspect, the sage reaches the knowledge that sound is the ultimate. Searching from the material aspect, the scientist has been led to the electricity. Remember, the sage has searched within himself, not within matter. Within yourself, the ultimate experience of your existence is that of sound. As long as you are aware of yourself, there will be the awareness of sound. The deeper you go within yourself, the less audible the sound will be. Until it becomes a word, that very silence has its own sound, the soundless sound, which Indian sages have described as anahat nad, unstruck sound. The unstruck sound is the ultimate sound, the last experience of human consciousness before it enters the formless is this sound. Because of this experience, Indian sages says that sound is the ultimate element. The scientist divides the scientist subdivides and subdivides matter into its smallest components, and just before it disappears into the formless, it is seen as the electron. Then, when matter is completely lost and formlessness happens, for him, what remains is electricity. What has to be considered is whether the smallest, the ultimate part of consciousness exists even before the smallest part of matter. It is certain that consciousness is more subtle than matter. Hence, the ultimate part of consciousness must exist before that of matter. That is why Indian sages have held the view that sound is more subtle than electricity, that it precedes electricity and is the ultimate source of everything. Music, prayer, and mantra, chanting are all usage of sound. Every sound creates a particular state within you. There is no sound which does not. Scientists who are experimenting with sound electronics now know that if particular musical instruments are played in front of a plant, it will grow flowers a month earlier than it would have otherwise. If particular musical instruments are played in front of cow, they will give more milk. But if the wrong instruments are played or the wrong music is played, they may not give any milk at all. Sound reaches within you and strikes your consciousness. A sword may cut your neck, but with the sword of sound, your mind can be cut. The blade of sound is sharper and disconnects your mind from its various preoccupations. So experiments have been done with the blade of sound in which sound is used to cut off the mind of a meditator or a devotee so he can begin his journey to the infinite. All religions have used special sound and refined them through thousands of years of experimentation. Recently, someone from Japan came to me. For the last 2 years, he has been doing an exercise from the Soto school of Zen. In this exercise, he makes the sound of moo moo most of his waking time. This sound is uttered continuously except when he rests and eats. He gets up at 3 in the morning, takes a bath, and begins to repeat moo moo. He does this for 3 days, and his thoughts become less and less. The sound of moo moo continues to reverberate. A sort of storm is created within. It becomes like a sword and cuts off all thinking. After 7 days, he does not need to create the sound. It continues on its own and spreads all over his body. Whatsoever he may be doing, sitting or walking, anything within him, the silent repetition of moo moo continues. Every cell and every fiber vibrates with its rhythm. It is difficult to eat because the sound of moo is going on. After 7 days, sleep is difficult too because his mouth goes on repeating moo moo. During whatever sleep he does have, the sound goes deeper and deeper. After 21 days, he begins to shout and roar the sound moo moo like a lion. His eyes, his face, and his behavior change. His teacher goes on pushing him to continue. Once he begins to roar, his eating, drinking, and sleeping drop. In the fourth week, he becomes as if mad, a state where he has no awareness of anything except the sound of moo moo. If you ask his name, he will reply moo. He loses all awareness of his body, only the awareness of moo remains. He does not know who he is. At this stage, he has to be watched over and guarded. He may do anything, he may go anywhere. In the last stage, he roars with his total strength. It is as if some wound has opened or a ghost has possessed him. And then everything calms down. A huge wave of the ocean has taken its last leap and fallen apart. The climax has passed and everything within him has scattered. He falls down and remains without moving, quiet and peaceful for 1 to 3 weeks. When he comes back, he is not the same person. He is a new man. The old man has died. Now, nothing that was old, his anger, his desire, his greed, can be traced. The continuity with his past is broken. With this experiment of Mu, with this great explosion of sound, his whole consciousness is transformed. Om is a similar sound. All religions have their own sounds which are used in worship. As the worship deepens, the impact of these sounds transforms the devotee. Devotional singing and the playing of musical instruments are also sound impacts, and that is why repetitions is significant. If you sing one song today, a different one tomorrow, and a third on the next day, there will be no result. There must be a continuous hammering on the same particular center. If you hammer a tent peg into different spots, it will never go into the ground. If you dig 2 feet at one place, 2 feet at another place, and 2 feet at yet another, you will never be able to dig a well. Similarly, changing centers like places does not bring results. To dig a well, digging has to be done in one spot only. That is why repetition has been insisted upon, so much so that for a whole month you have to repeat mu or om or a single line of a song again and again in the same rhythm. But there is a danger that the repetition becomes mechanical, as if it is just a job to be done and then it will be useless. The repetition has to be a question of life and death, as if you are totally staking everything on it. Every hair, every cell, every fiber of the body participates, every nerve, every bone, every piece of flesh and muscle becomes involved. Every drop of blood has to be called aloud. When your whole existence becomes that sound, there will be results. The devotee has to repeat only one word or a line of a song for years together for a particular region, to hammer on one spot again and again so that perhaps the door breaks open, and it does. So, sound, dancing, singing, and music have all been used in worship. They have all been done in front of an idol. This should be remembered because dancing as such is a different matter. Many people dance, but they do not become enlightened. If they are dancing for the sake of dancing, then this has no relationship with enlightenment. So everything has to be done in relationship to the formless, the infinite, and hence in front of the idol that has been made alive by your devotion. The idol will continuously remind you that the dance is not for the sake of dancing. The dancing is on the periphery, the center is the idol, the center is in the supreme being. All is in preparation for a jump into the ultimate. Otherwise, there are dancers, musicians, and singers who are all superb in their art, better than any devotee. But this is not the point. The devotee is not concerned with music or song. His purpose is different. His whole effort is to become so overwhelmed that he can dissolve and lose himself so fully that the inner flows take over and sets him afloat in the infinite. He has to become the circumference with the ultimate at the center. He has to create such liquidness that he can remain afloat and flow. You will often find a devotee with tears flowing down his cheeks. He is not weeping out of unhappiness, but out of joy. Tears flow only when something within has become liquid, fluid, either out of misery or overwhelming joy. Up to now, scientists have not been able to explain the purpose of tears. At best, they have discovered that tears are meant for cleaning the eyes of dust. Tear glands are only meant to clean the eyes. But why do tears flow when one is in pain, when one is unhappy, or when one is overjoyed? Does dust only fall into the eyes at those particular times, not and not otherwise? Whenever there is an overflowing, whenever there is an extreme of pain or pleasure, tears begin to flow. The tear glands open and tears flow out. Devotees also weep, but their weeping has a different quality. Someone who is not a devotee will not be able to understand it. What happens to a devotee that makes him weep? You may think he must have some difficulties and that he is weeping with weeping with folded hands because of this, but someone who is weeping because of his difficulties still has himself as the center. He is still not a devotee. He does not know what worship is. But there are moments when all the frozenness and rigidity which has solidified within us begin to liquefy, and the awareness of that happenings makes tears flow. These tears flow in gratitude and thankfulness toward existence. We have nothing but our tears to give to the grace that is flowing toward us. We feel we do not deserve whatever we are receiving, and that we cannot contain the joy that is descending on us. We had never even dreamed of such a feeling, and we have no way to show our gratitude. Neither words nor anything else can adequately express it. In such moments, the eyes weep in a different way. The devotee's eyes weep differently from those of a lover. The lover weeps, but that weeping has a different quality. The lover's tears are full of small desires and demands, but there are no demands in the devotee's tears. His eyes weep for no reason. He is simply helpless. Even when he wants to express his gratitude, words do not come out of his mouth. And when the mouth cannot speak, the eyes begin to speak in their own way. The perfection, the completion of worship is in tears, in their fluidity and in their flowing. Religious statues have been used in many different ways to experience ecstasy. Those who speak against such things do not know what worship means. Anything can be said by someone who does not know what is said by an ignorant person is not of much value. In this century, this kind of teaching has taken root because others also do not know. When nobody knows what is what, there is no choice but to believe whatever is said. If someone says there is no God, he does not have to prove anything. But whosoever says there is a God, he has to prove it. So the mind easily goes with that which is negative, but hesitates to go with anything positive because it will have to take the trouble to prove it. Worship is positive, religious statues are positive, and the denying something there is nothing to lose. Turgnews has written a small story. In a certain town, there was a very intelligent man, a genius, and in the same town, there lived an utter fool, an idiot. One day, the idiot approached the intelligent man and asked to be shown a way of becoming intelligent. The intelligent man asked the idiot whether he wanted to be intelligent or appeared to be an intelligent. Because to become intelligent was a long process, but to look intelligent was easy. The idiot replied he wanted to be shown the easier way. It was enough he looked intelligent. He did not want to bother about becoming intelligent. The intelligent man commented that in becoming intelligent there was a possibility of making a mistake, but in looking intelligent there could be no mistake. The idiot became impatient and requested that the trick be revealed without any delay. So the intelligent man whispered something in his ear, and from that day on, the idiot gradually began to become known as intelligent throughout the town. The people of the town began to gossip. How had this fool suddenly become intelligent? What had the intelligent man told him? He had simply told the fool to immediately negate everything statement he heard. If anyone said there is something to idol worship, the idiot was immediately to reply there was not. The idiot asked the intelligent man, should I say such thing even when I don't know anything about the subject? The intelligent man said, yes, you do not have to bother about knowing anything at all. Just negate whatever is said. If anyone tells you the works of Kalidas are wonderful, just say it is all rubbish. Ask them to prove that they are wonderful. If anyone says that some music is heavenly, say just such music is played even in hell, and ask the person to prove what heavenly music is like. Just deny everything, and if anyone opposes you, challenge him to prove his claim. Within 2 weeks, the idiot becomes famous for his intelligence throughout the town. People started saying that he was very deep and difficult to judge or understand. If someone said Tagore's poetry is beautiful, he replied that it is simply rubbish. Any school child could write such poems. Then the person felt sick because it was difficult to prove what he was saying. This century is, in a way, a century of many types of foolishness. And the foundation of our foolishness is negation. For a whole century, we have been denying one thing after another. When others are not able to prove something, they also join in the negation. But remember, the more negative a life is, the more insignificant it becomes. No truth can be known without becoming positive. The more negative a life is, although outwardly it will seem more intelligent, inwardly it will be more stupid. The more negative a life is, the less it will be possible for truth, bliss, and beauty to penetrate it, because all elevating experiences happen only to a positive mind. All experiences of value happen only to a positive mind. Whenever someone says no, something within his mind closes. Have you ever thought about the effect of words? If you close yourself in your own room and loudly say no, you will find that your whole heart contracts and becomes closed. If you say yes loudly, you will find that your heart opens its wings and flies into the sky. Words are not just born, the uttering of them creates some parallel event. In saying no, something contracts within you, and in saying yes, something opens within you. Someone asks Saint Augustine, what is your worship? What is your prayer? Saint Augustine replied, yes, yes, and yes. My Lord, this is my worship, this is my whole prayer. The man may not be understood what Saint Augustine had said, but whoever says yes to his life in his totality is a theist. Theism does not mean you saying yes to the existence of God, it is the capacity to say yes. The atheist does not just deny the existence of God, the atheist has no other capacity except to say no. Such a person will go on shrinking and contracting and will ultimately decay. But saying yes makes a person open up and expand so much that he merges with the infinite. Worshipping an idol or a statue is a very positive method, but you have to meditate and go so deep into the idol, into the worship, that you come to know there is no idol, there is only worship. The idol is just the beginning. It is true that worship too is of nothing less than the divine. Yet, in an even deeper sense, you will find that it is your own transformation. The divine is just an excuse, and that excuse makes it easy to transform oneself. Dr. Rudolph, about whom I was speaking earlier, developed an important principle that will be useful for you to know about. Whenever a thought arises in your mind, it has to travel through the nerves and muscles and through the whole mechanism of the body. For example, if the thought arises in my mind to love you and to take your hand in mine, immediately this thought begins to travel, passing from the brain through the mechanism of the body until it reaches my fingertips. Rudolph says that when a thought is born, it has the power of 100 units. By the time it reaches the fingertips, only one unit remains. 99 units of power are used up in the transmission. In translating that thought into action, all thoughts becomes lifeless by the time they reach the outer surface of the body. That is why more happiness is actually experienced at the thought of taking your beloved hand than the experience of it. At the moment of the experience, you feel that the experience is not as satisfying as you had expected. What happened? Why was the fulfillment of the thought less fulfilling that of thought itself? When someone thinks about making love, he feels elated, but after making love, he is left feeling depressed. He feels it was not so great after all. Why? When the thought was conceived, it has the potentiality of 100 units, but by the time it reached the periphery, it was reduced to 1 unit. Sometimes the potentiality becomes zero or even negative. If the body is sick or weak, so much energy is dissipated while it is traveling to a periphery that it can even become negative. So, if you are sick, you may have expected to feel happy when you held your beloved hands, but instead, by the time the thought has traveled to your hand, taking her hand makes you unhappy. The experience becomes negative. Rudolph says that if this is true, then man will never become happy. Is there a way that one's thought can directly jump into another's mind? Religion says there is, and through hundreds of experiments, Rudolph has also confirmed that my thought can take a direct jump into another's mind. Without using the medium of my physical body to do so, I stopped my thought at a third eye center by closing my eyes and make it jump directly to your third eye. The whole system of telepathy depends on this art. Rudolph demonstrated this by transmitting a thought 1000 miles. Other experiments at Harvard in Russia and in many other countries have given proof of telepathy. In this experiment, you concentrate your thought on your third eye as if your thought has become a small sun revolving rapidly in your mind. That small sun becomes focused and highly potent. The thought is not allowed to spread to the rest of the body, which would allow loss of energy. The energy has to accumulate at one point where it remains focused like a strong ray of light. Just when you feel that it cannot become more focused, more concentrated, that is the moment for the thought to jump. At exactly that moment, you have to project the thought into the mind of other person. However far away the person may be, he must be in your field of imagination, and you need to imagine that the thought has entered the mind of the other person through his third eye. Once this happens, the thought is transformed. Once that happens, the thought is transferred. Telepathy is the art of projecting a thought into someone else without any physical medium. The third eye has been meditated on in many ways for religious purposes. It can be used for communicating with the cosmic mind as well as with the human mind. For example, you are sitting in front of Mahaviraj statue. Mahaviraj consciousness has become one with the infinite. But if you concentrate your total energy at the third eye center and project it into the statue's head, your thought will be transmitted to the consciousness of Mahavira. In this way, many people who have come after Mahaviraj have been helped. For such people, Buddha, Mahavira, and Christ are not dead, but alive here and now. For them, there is a direct communication, a direct communion. This experiment can also be used to take a direct jump into the infinite. But how will you find the third eye of the infinite? To where will you protect your thought energy? To where will you transmit it? It will be easier to communicate through the medium of an idol. Directly projecting the thought beam into the infinite is difficult. It can be done, but for that there is a different technique. The religions which have not used idols or statues of religious figures have used that technique, but it is very difficult. So even those religions which did not at first use idols finally came around to using them. Islam has not used idols, but the mosques has become the idol, and the graves of Muhammad saints are worshipped. Even today, in any part of the world, when the Muhammadan says his prayers, he faces the direction of Kaaba. Those who know about it have used the Kaaba as a medium through which tra- to transmit their third eye thoughts. Those who do not understand the secret meaning just stand facing the direction of the Kaaba while they pray. It does not make any difference whether you project onto the Kaaba or an idol. It makes no difference whether you kiss the feet of the idol or the stone of Kaaba. It is one and the same. There is no photograph of Muhammad, there is no statue of Muhammad, but what difference has it made? Something else was done. No statue or picture of Muhammad was ever made, but devotees sowed flowers on the tombs of Muslim saints. It was not possible to find an equally powerful substitute for Muhammad. So, if Krishna instructs his devotee to bow down at the feet of his image, he is far-sighted in understanding their problems. Krishna knew that it is very difficult for a man to avoid using an idol. Taking a direct jump into the infinite is so difficult, only 1 in 10% might succeed. Then what will happen to the rest? If Krishna statue is not available, they will just use any idol, which will be very ordinary. What has been the effect of prohibiting the use of an idol of Muhammad? If a Muhammadan fakir dies in some town, Muhammadans gather around his tomb. The Muhammadans are not wrong in doing so. It is the inner nature of man that is responsible. To me, what a statue of Muhammad could have done cannot be done by the tomb of a fakir. Although Muhammad was right in saying there is no need for a statue. This is true for only 1 in a million, and such a person needs nothing to reach anywhere. He does not need an idol, a Kaaba, a Quran, or a Gita. He also does not need Muhammad, Krishna, or Buddha. For him, everything is unnecessary. He can attend directly, but what about others? For the rest, all those things are needed, and when something is needed, it is better to have the best. It is better in instead of worshipping the tomb of a fakir or the statue of some virtuous villagers to have the statue of a Buddha, a Krishna, or a Mahavira. When you have to travel by sea, it is risky to go by a small locally made boat. It is better to travel in an ocean liner. When Buddha's ship is available, it is stupid to depend on an amulet made by some fakir or on the grave of a person whose blessings may have helped some people to recover from a disease. But if Buddha's statue is not available because of man's inner need, he will look for a substitute. Superficially, it seems as if those who have rejected the worship of idols and statues have said something great. But those who are in favor of idol worship have the experience of thousands of years, and they know from experience that a person will need an idol. Most people have a limitation in that they cannot reach the formless directly. They need a rest stop on the way, and the more beautiful and comfortable the place is, the better. There have been no society on earth which did not worship some kind of idol. No group of human being has existed in any corner of the earth which did not use an idol in one form or other. This indicates that the idol fulfills some inherent need, not just for the individual, but for the whole of humanity. It is only in this century or the last 200 years that the concept of the idol has been settled. Some people argue that idols are a meaningless burden, just stones, and they must be removed. But if the meaning behind such worship were first properly understood, I don't think an intelligent person would want to remove the idols. If the scientific thinking behind idol worship is not understood, then the idols will have to be removed. They cannot be saved, and they will probably fall away by themselves. Today, people worship idols and statues without understanding and bow down before them without knowing why. Their hearts do not participate. It is just a formality that has remained. Such people will only be the cause of the destruction of the idol, because although they worship every day, there is no transformation in their lives, and hence it seems futile to worship an idol or statue. A person worships an idol for 40 years and nothing happens to him. Then he drags his son to the temple too. When the son asks his father if he has not got anything out of 40 years of worship, why is he being forced to go to the temple? There is no answer. If something had happened in the father, the question would not have arisen. There is a small fable by Aesop. In a forest, a lion was asking every animal he came across whether he was the king of the forest or not. He asked a bear, and the bear said, "You are definitely king." Then he asked a leopard, who hesitated a little but then said, "Yes, the lion is the king." Then the lion asked the elephant, who immediately picked him up in his trunk and threw him a great distance. While he was in mid-air, the lion said to the elephant, "O great being, if you didn't know the answer, you could have simply said so. You didn't need to throw me away. I would have gone of my own accord." But the elephant that is powerful enough to lift up and throw, the lion does not need to make any reply. It is not necessary for him to say who the king is. Someone who worships an idol would not need to reply if he truly knew what worship was. His life would be the answer. His eyes, the way he sits and stands, would become the reply. But those who do not know what worship is and still go on worshipping are responsible for the declining interest in the idols.